This demonstration walks through the steps to configure an Isilon SyncIQ replication job for disaster recovery. The demonstration highlights 4 areas: creating the SyncIQ policy, starting the replication job, performing a failover, and performing a failback. Before beginning with the configuration, shown here is a simple topology the configuration will address. The Boston cluster is the SyncIQ source, and the Seattle cluster is the SyncIQ target. Let's begin at our host. Here I have the browser open, and notice I am connected to both the Boston cluster and the Seattle cluster. The directory that I will replicate are the user home directories. For this demonstration, note that I also have the share from the Seattle cluster mapped to the host. The Seattle cluster is configured with identical access zones and naming structure. Both clusters have SyncIQ licensed. I'll go to the SyncIQ page on the source cluster, mouse over Data Protection, select SyncIQ, and then the Policies tab. Next, select Create SyncIQ Policy. All the fields are explained in detail in the Isilon Disaster Recovery Training course and the Isilon 1FS Web Administration Guide. For the demonstration, I am keeping the configuration very simple. The policy name is Boston to Seattle HomeDirs. The type of replication will be synchronized. The job type is manual. /ifs/home/DEES is the SyncIQ domain. Down in the target field, the target host is seattle.dees.lab, and the target directory is /ifs/home/DEES. Click on Create Policy. That's it for a very basic policy. Before moving on, let's take a look at an assessment to validate the process. Select Assess Sync. Now go to the Reports tab and view the assessment. We can also navigate to the Seattle Cluster Data Protection SyncIQ page on the Local Targets tab to view the policy target. Now let's start the job. This is done on the source cluster. Here we are on the SyncIQ page, Policies tab. In the Actions column for a job, select Start Job. Next, we'll go to the Summary tab and verify the job status is running. For demonstration purposes, there are only a few files to replicate, and the initial replication should complete fairly quickly. My host has both the source and target directories mapped. Here we can see the animation directory has replicated to the target cluster. This directory is read-only, and if I go into the animation directory and try to write, I'll get an error. Back in the source directory, I am able to write data. Here I'm just doing a copy and paste of one of the files. Next, let's fail over to the Seattle cluster. First, I'll stop writes to the cluster by disabling SMB services. This may not be practical in a real environment where you may want read and write access to other workflows. Our SyncIQ policy is already set to manual. If the policy is not set to manual, we would modify the SyncIQ policy to manual at this time. A failover is done on the target cluster. We'll go to the Seattle cluster SyncIQ page and Local Targets tab. On the policy to failover, I'll choose Allow Writes. In a real environment, the users will be redirected to the Seattle cluster. For demonstration purposes, I'm not making any DNS changes. Since my host can already access the target, I will verify write access to the target by copying data to the share. We have created the policy, started the job, and failed over. Now let's fail back to put the cluster back in a normal state. On the Boston cluster SyncIQ page, Policies tab, I'll select Resync Prep. Next, on the target cluster SyncIQ page, Policies tab, I'll verify the mirror policy is created. Let's go ahead and stop writes to the secondary cluster. I'll do this by disabling the SMB service. Back on the SyncIQ page, I will start job on the mirror policy. The Summary tab will show the active jobs. Now I'll go to the Source Cluster SyncIQ page, Local Targets tab, and verify the status is Finished, and then select Allow Writes. This puts the target cluster back to a read-only state. Next, go to the target cluster SyncIQ page, Policies tab, and on the mirror policy, select Resync Prep. On both the source and target clusters, I'll re-enable the SMB service and then verify I have write access on the animation directory. We covered creating a SyncIQ policy, starting the replication job, failing over and failing back. This concludes the demonstration.